Good morning, everyone, and thank you guys so much for joining today. Happy Monday. So far, the market is not looking bad. We're coming off of an amazing recovery to end Friday. Like I said, the market's not looking bad this morning. It's just kind of holding its ground. But I will say some important news to be aware of is, I guess you could say with Beyond Meat, like there isn't any crazy news this morning, but Beyond Meat did get a double upgrade, which is always good to see. And that one has been all over the place lately, so definitely keep it on your radar. But Tom, what stocks are you watching for this week?
I'm really keeping my eye on the SPY today, at least. I know that later in the week, we're going to have some pretty big earnings coming up, like with AMD, PayPal, Google, and even like Facebook and Amazon later in the week. But as far as today, I'm really going to be watching the SPY, Mike. We're actually getting to the upper edge of this range that it's been in between like 426 and 444. And if we break out up above 444 today, I could possibly see the SPY getting a bit of an uptrend here. We've been consolidating for like 3 to 4 trading days straight, and I could finally see it having a move. And hopefully some of these stocks here at market open are green, and it looks like we are having some pretty good movement. Like Netflix is up like 4%. We have NIO also up 4%. It seems like the growth stocks are holding up well.
Absolutely. And speaking of Netflix, I actually saw just a little, I guess you can say, point about Netflix on CNBC this morning. They got upgraded by Citi, and they got their stock raised from neutral to buy. Citi said that following the recent sell-off, prevailing equity values don't reflect material subscriber growth prospects or improving subscriber economics beyond 2023. So basically they're saying Netflix is oversold and they like it right now. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's good to see. And then we have NIO also flying up today. And any type of good news with upgrades is always nice. I know that DraftKings even had a pretty good upgrade last week, and we can see they're up 2.23%. And they're actually getting a pretty good move here at market open on the 5-minute candle. Even on the 1 minute, I mean, it's just been straight up. So that's good to see there. I know Peloton's also coming back, Mike. They had a pretty explosive turnaround day on Friday, and look at them up 5.5%. They're actually starting to run pretty well.
Wow. Yeah, they're not looking bad, Tom. Up 5% already. It's been a wild ride for Peloton. It's kind of crazy to think that just, I guess you can say a couple months ago, a little over a year ago, this stock was at $171, and it was at like 22 like on Friday. So it's like, it just goes to show you the volatility that you have with I guess you can say growth plays, and it also shows you what bad news can do to a company. Like it went from 171 down to 22. So crazy stuff.
Yeah, I cannot believe that they're this low. I mean, look at this daily chart. Like whenever they had that bad earnings report and they gapped down, I was not expecting them down that much. And even like whenever Netflix fell 20%, like I was just not expecting a huge drop out of such a big company like Netflix. It makes more sense with Peloton, but I couldn't believe Netflix even had a big drop like that. And I'm glad to see them kind of recovering up. I think that's pretty good to see that. What did you say they had today? It wasn't necessarily an upgrade, was it?
It was an upgrade. It was in Citi. Yeah, Citi said they went from neutral to a buy rating.
Oh, nice. So I knew they had some nice words, but I'm really glad to see that they did upgrade it. That's good to see too. And, I know Netflix is really far off of its high. It's honestly, it fell down to 351. It almost halved itself there.
Yeah, crazy. I've been looking to buy the dip on this one. I just am looking to get like my starter position around 325. I just don't know if we're ever going to retest that again. Hopefully we do, but if we don't, I guess it'll just be a missed opportunity for me. But 325 ideally is where I would start to buy some shares. And I believe that Netflix co-CEO, I believe he's actually been buying the dip with his own money. So let me just pull it up really quickly. So let me see. So Netflix's co-CEO, Reed Hastings, it looks like he just bought around $20 million worth of Netflix shares, mainly at like $390 each.
Wow, that's actually a pretty good price there, right around $390. That's not bad. It actually looks like he would have gotten in like sometime last week or so, at least based on the average there. But that's pretty nice to see, Mike, that he's getting in down here. That would give me some confidence at least. And even if it kept going down in the short term, I still feel like that averaging into this one will be pretty good, but I honestly wouldn't be surprised if it had more downwards movement in the short term. Like whenever a stock gaps down 20%, it's not every day that it just recovers straight back up. So I would definitely expect some more volatility sometime.
No doubt. So thank you guys so much for joining. Welcome Ravi, I'm Fierce, Jerry, Keisha, George, Bill, Hunter, and Vicky to the stream. You guys know the drill. Let us know what stocks you want us to cover, and we will definitely take a look at them. Tom, how's Roblox looking? I know that one has been all over the place over the past couple of months, and yeah, I know it's been pretty rough lately.
Yeah, I had a bit of resistance at $60 there this morning, and we actually popped right above that. We were up 5% a minute ago. Now we're up 4.7%. But yeah, the stock's moving very well today. It's explosive to the upside, just like we saw with Netflix, Neo, and a few other growth stocks. So looking pretty good here for Roblox. I really hope that they can start to turn around, Mike. Like this one has been pretty much straight down for the past 2 months. I know a lot of stocks have been going down like this, but man, I feel like that Roblox, Unity, and a few of those like metaverse stocks have just been looking like falling knives lately. So I'm really hoping they form some good supports and they start to fly up. And I'm really glad that they passed above that $60 resistance.
Sounds good. Tom, you know I'm a huge fan of Zoom, so it's up over 3% today, so we definitely have to take a look at this one. Zoom, I really like this one for the long term. Feel like it's at a great level. I love how they've been doing fundamentally. They're up 3% today. Just last week, I saw a couple million flow into some Zoom longer term calls, which is always good to see. I feel like it's at a great level, and it's finally looking like it might be turning around. Like I know there have been a couple points that it has looked like this over like the past couple weeks, and I know you just highlighted it right around, I guess you can say December, like early December, but hopefully we see like a strong turnaround with this one.
Yeah, I hope so too. Like you pointed out, their fundamentals are pretty good compared to most of these growth stocks. And I think this one's going to be one of the better pickups out of the whole growth sector. So I like it too. I'm glad to see it turning around. It's up 2.4%. I could see this one possibly going a little bit higher today. Didn't you say they had some nice upgrades early on?
So I know we talked about Netflix and then Beyond. I don't remember.
Oh, it was Beyond is the one that had them.
Yeah, Beyond. Let me see. I mean, yeah, I don't see any major upgrades today with Zoom, but I'm sure the analysts will come in once it starts to run up.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. It'll be pretty cool to see that, and then even like it'll be nice to see different funds grabbing it. For example, I know that Kathy Wood has been like she's a little bit of a player in Zoom, so I can't wait to see like how these guys start averaging in or how they start picking up shares down here at the bottom. It's definitely gonna be interesting. And like you said, you saw a couple million flow into those calls, so that should give us some confidence at least a shorter term play.
You know it. All right, so we have Bill saying Rivian looking to break 60. Tom, it's been a while since we talked about Rivian, so what do you think about this one? I know it's been pretty rough lately, but then again, a lot of growth stocks have been selling off.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily all Rivian's fault why they've been going down. I think some of this has been attributed to the growth sector, but I will say, they were probably one of the like whenever they were going up, obviously you were one of the main people saying that they were overvalued, and they were. I mean, they were the third largest automaker in the world, and they didn't even have any sales. Like, how's that even possible? So of course they fell down. They ended up falling below 100. Now I didn't think they'd get down to $50, but wow, I remember Mike a long time ago. You said you targeted 55, and they got pretty close there. So I don't know. It's looking to me. I think it's a pretty good dip buy if you like EVs for the long term, but I still don't know if it's the right price point yet, but I think it's at least a good time to start averaging in. I mean, they're down so much from that 180 high.
Yeah, I think we're going to have Hunter do a fundamental analysis on this one to see if it's worth the buy or not. But, I know there's a lot of hype with it. But then again, Tom, like the valuations in the EV industry are just insane. So it's like, you can easily buy a great company, but if you buy it at a bad price, you're still screwed. So that's, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to avoid that problem. So I'll definitely take a look at their fundamentals. But either way, like Bill said, it's trying to break $60. So maybe if it breaks that, we can have like a nice potential like momentum play.
Yeah, I think it'll be a nice momentum play. And honestly, I'm eyeing up some of these for the long term, like Rivian, Lucid, stocks like that. Like as they start to dip, I'm really going to be eyeing them. And I think $50 is a pretty good level here, at least on Rivian. I don't know the exact fundamentals behind it, like their cash flow and everything like that. But I will say though, like as the years start to progress, I feel like that $50 will be a pretty good price point. So that's my only point with that. But I'm really looking at some of these for the long term, like Rivian, Lucid, stocks like that. I feel like that as they start to dip, it will be a good pickup. But like you mentioned, though, you definitely have to eye them up and get them at the right price points. And that's why I would only average in here just a very small amount.
Yep. All right, we have Johnny Leverage saying thoughts on UPST shares. So I've been really considering this one for some short puts or maybe a share position on it. I'm probably gonna do a video dedicated to this one soon. I have a lot of upcoming videos related to like fundamentals on different companies, so I'll definitely take a look at Upstart. I just want to get like a nice, clear, 100% like deep fundamental analysis on this one before I buy it. I will say that the revenue has been growing pretty rapidly over the years, and in 2021, it has definitely been growing at an exponential pace. Just to put something into perspective really quickly, in 2019, Upstart's revenue was $164 million. In just the most recent quarter of 2021, the quarterly revenue was $228 million. So it's like they're clearly growing at a crazy pace. But yeah, I mean, I just want to take a clear look at their fundamentals before a potential dip buy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this one will be another good one to start averaging into. But, like you said, you have to be really careful with some of these. And the thing that scares me with Upstart, Mike, is look at how much we've been falling. We fell from $400 down to $100. Like, could you even imagine like buying in up here at the top and holding that through this drop? Like, I would almost be crying. So I don't even know what to think about this stock. It could definitely continue lower at this point, given the rate that we've been going down. So I definitely be careful with it. I think it's a good time to average in, but like I said before, if I have maybe $10,000, I would only start averaging in here with like $1,000. Like there's no way I would throw a lot in here at these price points yet. They could still go a little bit lower.
Yeah, like I like Upstart, but I don't love it at this level. Like I said, I'm going to take a deeper look at their fundamentals, but they have a price to sales ratio of like 12.7, which is kind of high. And then another thing is like they're in an extremely competitive industry, which is totally fine, but it's like they're not one of the leaders, and that's a concern for me. In the financial services industry, like you have so many powerhouse institutions, and obviously like those top dogs, I guess you can say, like they're going to do like everything they can to adapt or even copy Upstart if need be. Like in an industry like, let's say, sports betting, like you guys know I love DraftKings. Like at least DraftKings is one of the top players. It worries me a little bit knowing that Upstart is still relatively small compared to other financial institutions. So I don't know. I'll take a deeper look at this one in a future video.
Yeah, and like what do we have? We have Upstart, Affirm, Lending Club. Like there's so many of them out there that do very similar stuff like that. And it's, we can even see Affirm here on their chart. Like their chart looks very similar to Upstart's chart, and they're almost direct competitors there. So looking at them, Mike, I definitely agree with you there. That's a pretty saturated sector, I'll say. Like it's pretty hard for these newer companies, I think, to get into that type of business, but we'll have to see how those numbers end up going. You're right. I mean, the fundamentals on these ones will be huge, I think, especially with them being in the financial sector. But, sometimes like a stock like Tesla, they can have, like we've been seeing for the past like 5 years, their fundamentals weren't the best, but the stock just kept flying up. But, some of these stocks like Affirm and Upstart, they're going to be pretty hard to go up with hype.
Yeah, so it's like Upstart, SoFi, what's another one? Like Lending Club, like you said, Discover, like even like Amex has like personal loan options. So I don't know. I'll take a look at it. But then we have Hunter saying maybe I can get in cahoots with Rivian and have them give me a truck for a good review. Maybe. I don't even know like how their production is doing. I have not been following it too much lately. Like I said, I'm gonna do a lot more research with it, but I just really haven't been following it.
Yeah, and the one thing to keep in mind is that even though like a lot of these fundamentals and stuff, they might not project good numbers right now, a lot of investors are betting on that as they start to increase production over the next year or 2 years, that it will start to get better. Now that doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that's obviously the hope that people are having with companies like Rivian. Like there was no reason for them to be the third largest automaker in the world at that time with zero sales. And they really need to increase that production, and I think that's what a lot of traders are betting on. But we've also seen a lot of traders bet on companies like Nikola Motors. They like look at Nikola, for example, how they moved. Like, let's go look at them on a max daily chart. Like, sure, they had all that hype in the beginning, and I'm sure people were really eyeing them up, even at like the $20 support down here. And then, they just have that bad news. They continue to sell off, and now they're at $7. And this can happen to any stock, guys, so it's always good to be careful.
Yep. All right. Sam said that Rivian has only, I think, about 16% of its shares publicly traded. So that's very interesting, and we'll definitely take a look at that. Ravi said, is it a good time to take Tesla March calls now at the current levels? I would say no, mainly because of the pricing on them. IV is 70%, which is still kind of high. March calls, like, let me just take a look. March calls, I mean, if you wanted to go at the money, you would have to pay over $8,000, which in my opinion, it's not worth it. I mean, your break-even price wouldn't even be till like $970 or so, which is kind of ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, it can pop. It's just, is it worth the risk? And to me, it's not. Maybe if you're extremely bullish on Tesla, then maybe it's a different story. But I would consider, if you're bullish on Tesla, I would consider either a call debit spread, a put credit spread, or just shares of Tesla. I feel like naked calls are not the smartest move to make at this point in time.
Yeah, especially with Tesla's pricing, like some of those calls are just crazy expensive, especially if you go like at the money, like you mentioned. So it's going to be pretty crazy to see Tesla go over the next couple days. Like they've been moving down off their earnings, and now they're kind of recovering up with some of these growth stocks. And their earnings were so mixed, Mike. Like they had good numbers overall, but then they did say though that the chip production and all those slowdowns did hurt them a little bit. But the numbers came in pretty good, especially for Tesla. A lot of people could have expected a lot worse. So I'm glad to see the numbers came in well, and I hope that they start recovering back. And as far as looking at them on the daily, Mike, like I was pretty worried to see them going down last week. They were going down in a major way, but the good news is that they did bounce right off of that $800 support. So maybe that'll end up holding up for you.
So we have Carlos saying, does anyone know if this is a recovery for Tesla or a move on news? So Tom, what are you thinking, like with this Tesla price action?
Personally, I think that this is just a move on news here. Like last week, we had a bad earnings report. We moved down, and now Tesla's just kind of recovering up with the rest of growth, I should say. So like we're seeing Tesla go up today with Enphase, Matterport, Roblox, Neo, all these stocks in the growth sector that Tesla likes to go up with. So I'm glad to see that whole sector's up. But at the same time, though, last week, Tesla had some bad moves with their outlook and with their earnings. So we'll have to see how it goes. I think it's more of news driven personally. But as far as today, like I don't see it really recovering back up. Maybe this week back up to like $1,000 or $975 or anything like that, at least yet. Maybe if we break out above 900, we can. But I just feel like that there's still possibly room to go down here, especially if we see the overall market turn around maybe midweek or so.
Gotcha. And then Ravi said, why is Tesla's Theta always higher than the Delta? So the main reason for this is because of the pricing of Tesla options. Like if you were to go to like a Palantir chain, and let's say you were like at the money, or it just depends on the option you select, the ratio between Delta and Theta would be much different. But because Tesla's options are so like highly priced, you have to keep in mind that a Delta's like maximum value is 1.0. So it's like if you get at the money, it's just the theta values are going to be greater than 1 if we're looking at like an absolute value scale. But like just the main thing to keep in mind is that especially for calls, the maximum value for a delta value is 1.0. So once you get above a certain price point on an option, the theta just eventually will be greater than 1. So that's why. But if you went to like a cheaper stock, it would be different with a lower IV. Dennis said, thoughts on FGI as a day trade? Tom, I have not looked at this one ever, I don't think. So it's up 60%, tons of volumes coming in. It looks like it's clearly running off of some catalyst. Let's see, it looks like no news to account for the move. So it looks like they just had a circuit breaker. So I'm seeing it exploding up off of no news according to Thinkorswim.
Yeah, that's funny whenever Thinkorswim says that sometimes. Like, you'll look at the Thinkorswim news tab expecting to see like an upgrade or a downgrade or something, and then you see, well, the stock's moving based on no news. So sometimes it's kind of like misleading. But yeah, looking at it, I hope that FGI keeps going for you. It looks like a pretty good day trade opportunity to me, Mike. It's bouncing off of $5. It is getting rejected here at this resistance around 625, though. It did hit right around here in pre-market and also fall down, so maybe be careful of that. But I do like that $5 support here, Mike. But I don't know, though. Personally, it's just not a stock for me. It's just so volatile today, and it's just going to be one of those volatile movers, I think. And hopefully that $5 support holds up.
It's going to be such a hit or miss play. I mean, Tom, through our trading careers, we've seen so many plays like this that'll have maybe like a 30% chance of exploding up to like whatever $40, but then most of the time it just ends up fading off. But it's just like a hit or miss play. It's a total hype play. Thinkorswim can't even find any news on it. So like I said, this is the first time I'm ever looking at this play, but it just looks like one of those hype plays. We have Z saying FGI is moving in sympathy to KSCP. So let's see, KSCP. So yeah, this one's up 40% too. Let's see, is there any news with this one? Looks like they had a circuit breaker. It looks like they added a K5 robot to finance firm security program. So yeah, their charts do look pretty similar, but again, like they're just moving off of like hype. So it's just hit or miss.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to see it moving like this, though. It's definitely having some nice movement, and if you can maybe catch it like on a good breakout, like maybe if it breaks the high here, maybe if you see a nice move up above like 2750, you might be able to catch it for like a quick intraday move, kind of like what we talked about earlier with a few stocks kind of trying to break out there. So I feel like that could be a good way to play this, but I don't think I would play it until we saw a good break.
There we go. All right, we have Kathy saying Baba is up 4%. What are your thoughts? So I actually called out Baba before the market even opened in the Discord. It was actually my free day trade. So looking at the day trading channel, I called it out before open, so feel free to check that out each morning. There's usually some good plays in there, but long story short, I do like Baba at these levels for a longer term play. For the short term, it also has some potential. IV is high, but it's not sky high. I do like it. It's a little bit risky in the sense that Baba is an extremely volatile stock, but it's also nice because it isn't really correlated to the U.S. markets. At least it hasn't been over like the past couple months. So I do like it overall.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Mike, I'm actually starting to find a bit of a trend here. Like, Baba's been forming a nice support down here around 110, and it's been moving very well the past couple of days off of that support. And we're actually starting to see that play out with a few stocks. Like Zoom, for example, they touched that 135 support last week. They're back on the uptrend. Tesla also formed a nice support down here around $800, and now they're moving back. So seems like we have a lot of stocks recovering off of their supports here. And it looks like Baba's definitely one of the leaders. They're up 4%, and they've been having some awesome movement ever since they touched 110. They're almost back up to 120 now.
There we go. All right, so we have Bill saying, what do you recommend for hedging your longs? Covered calls or puts or something else? So I would say step one is finding out where you have exposure. You know, if you're holding the SPY, whether it's calls, whether it's shares, anything like that, there's a lot of things you can do. It just depends on where implied volatility is and what your sentiment is. For example, let's say implied volatility is really low and you're holding SPY shares. You would probably not want to sell covered calls because IV is low and you'll get a very low premium for doing that. So in that situation, you would probably want to buy SPY puts or maybe buy VIX calls or VIX shares, or VXX shares, I should say. So if IV's low and you want to hedge, consider buying puts or VIX or something like that. However, if you have like SPY shares and IV's high, you might want to do covered calls or maybe some sort of like SPY call credit spread or maybe a SPY put debit spread. That could be a decent option. Of course, you can always play with like VXX if you want to as well. But step one is just find out where you have exposure, because a lot of times, like I see retail traders especially, let's say they're holding shares of Palantir, they might say, okay, I'm going to hedge this position, and then they'll buy SPY puts. But the problem is that like Palantir has like a negative correlation to the SPY, so it's like it's not even really a hedge. So step one, find out where you have exposure. Step two, analyze implied volatility and see how bearish you are. So it's like if you're really bearish and IV's low, you might buy a lot of SPY puts and things like that. But there's a lot of different ways to hedge. Honestly, there's not really a wrong way to do it as long as what you're hedging has exposure to your main asset. But besides that, great question, Bill.
Yeah, and I've seen lots of traders make mistakes with that, especially on like stocks with like AMC or GameStop. Like whenever a lot of traders were getting shares up there at the top, they were also then buying puts on the way down. And of course it worked out sometimes, but then sometimes they would just get totally destroyed because that IV was just way too high. And, it's always good to make sure you're looking at that IV, make sure it's low. And, it's always important to get hedges though too, like especially over the past like few weeks, I think a lot of traders might have gotten hit, especially on some shares. So they're probably starting to really look up maybe some hedging strategies. So really good question.
There we go. Alrighty, so we have Nick saying Boeing is making its move up towards 200. Tom, Boeing has been struggling for a while, so it's good to finally see some decent movement with this one. I know the past earnings report was pretty scary, but it looks like it's holding its ground.
Yeah, it is. I'm really happy for this one. Like Boeing's been just getting destroyed the past couple weeks. They had some bad earnings and they moved down off of that. Kind of like what we saw with Tesla, except this time Boeing actually had some pretty bad numbers. So looking at it, I hope that they end up recovering, Mike, but I'm not going to bank on it too soon. This one, I will say their earnings were pretty bad whenever they reported. And I love Boeing, but they've just been having a really tough past couple of years. And I think they'll be a good stock to start averaging into. Maybe you could short some puts on them and stuff like that. Let's see how the IV. Actually, it might be a pretty good time to short some puts, Mike, down here. The IV is actually pretty high comparatively, so I think it's a good time for that and a good time to start averaging into shares. But yeah, I mean that earnings report was brutal. I really hope that they start getting better. But I will say the good news is that some of the big airlines like American and Delta, I saw some reports saying that they expect to be profitable like maybe the second half of this year. So maybe that'll help out Boeing a little bit.
There we go. All right, Tom, on a different note, I will say today is an awesome day for growth plays. It has been months, Tom, months of just constant downtrends, struggling, and just sadness in the growth industry. But I'm looking across my watch list today. At the top, we have Beyond Meat up 10%. We have Neo up nearly 10%. Spotify up 9.5%. Chewy up 6.7%. Palantir up 6%. Square up 6%. DraftKings isn't doing too bad either. They are up around just under 4%, but Zoom's up. Even Disney's looking good. So it's a good day, Tom. We're in the green.
Yeah, I'm really happy to see that. I'm honestly just sitting here waiting for the SPY to finally break out above 444. Like I've been saying all morning, they've been in this huge range. And with all these stocks flying up today, especially some of these stocks like Beyond and Neo, like 10%. But yeah, I mean, I'm just really waiting for the SPY to start to break this high of 444. I feel like once it breaks that, we could get a nice run out of the SPY. The QQQ is looking great. It actually already broke. Well, it's actually sitting right around its high of last week. It's moving a little bit more than the SPY is, though. But either way, I mean, yeah, these stocks are doing very good, Mike. I'm glad to see it. We even have AMC in the green, which is pretty rare, but even they're up today, up 4.7%. We have Snapchat up as well. Some of these social media companies doing better. I know they've been also beaten down, but yeah, it's a really good day, Mike. Lots of stocks are doing good. There's a few stocks in the red, like some of the oil plays like Oxy, but I will say those stocks were running up while all these other stocks were going down. So maybe we'll start to see a bit of a transition out of some of these and maybe into some of the growth stocks.
Here we go. All right, we have Jerry. Yeah, we have Jerry saying SPY below 440, before above 444. Yeah, we shall see. I mean, right now it's trending up, which is pretty decent right now. But yeah, if you're in puts, I really hope it does fall. But right now it's getting closer to 444. But we know how the market has been. You know, it's been so volatile lately, and Jerry's been on fire. So we'll definitely keep SPY on our radar. But yeah, Tom, do you have like any thoughts on the market right now? Any plays you're watching or anything like that?
Yeah, that would be hilarious if it hit 444 and then tanked down, kind of like it did last week whenever Powell spoke. I know that ended up being a pretty big resistance there, so we'll definitely be eyeing that up. But Mike, as far as setups, I really like some of these beaten down companies like Netflix. Like, they are just recovering in such a good way. Same thing with some of these metaverse plays, kind of like Matterport, Unity. They're just moving up in such good ways. I'm just so glad to see these stocks finally back. I know Zoom's up too, Peloton. Now, I will say though, Mike, the only issue I'm having with these is they are up quite a bit today. Like Zoom's up 4.2%. They are approaching some resistances. Like they're right around 150 right now. After that, it looks like we have some resistance around 153 to 154. So it's going to be tough, I think, today. They're already up quite a bit. But maybe we can find like some good plays with some of these lower price companies. Like we go look at like Delta Airlines, Mike. They're only up 0.4% and they're starting to run. So maybe if some of these like slower movers today, maybe they'll start to catch up to some of these stocks that are up maybe 4 or 5%.
Very true. All right, we have J Deep saying AMD above 109. AMD is having a day, Tom. It's up just under 4%, and it's holding up pretty well, especially after the major downtrend that it's had over like the past couple of months. It's good to see it up in the green today.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually right at a humongous psychological level, guys. It bounced right off of the $100 support. And if I go look at this on a 5-day 5-minute chart, you can pretty much see that we did fall under 100 for just a few minutes there, but we've also touched it like 3 other times, like right on the money there at $100. So it's really cool to see it bounce off that support. I'm glad that it's moving back up. Now, Mike, I know that we've been talking about these stocks going down for quite a while, and AMD had a pretty big fall from 164 all the way down to 100. I think this might have caught a few traders off guard, but keep in mind this. A lot of people were also expecting this, and AMD is going to be one of the big ones for tomorrow, Mike. They're going to have humongous earnings coming out tomorrow after close. I'm going to really have my eyes on them because they are just such a big chip stock, and if they report a slowdown or something, that could maybe bleed over into some of the other companies like Nvidia and stocks like that. But I'm really thinking that AMD might come in with some good earnings here. They've been really innovating, and every time they report, it seems like they do pretty well.
Very true. Alrighty, good stuff there. Tom, would you mind pulling up the earnings calendar for this week just so we could take a look at some of the big players? So yeah, tomorrow's going to be huge. We have, of course, Exxon, AMD, UPS, PayPal, Google, Starbucks. So tomorrow will be huge. What's your, I guess you can say, favorite report for this week?
I will have to say, let's look at them all really closely because I always find one in the beginning of the week, and then there's one on like Thursday or Friday that always catches me off guard. Let's see, we have Activision, Unity, Snapchat, Ford, Amazon. The biggest one I think I'm probably going to be watching is going to be AMD. I really am going to be watching Amazon in a close second though, because Amazon's been dipping quite a bit on their chart also, and I'm really curious to see how their holiday numbers come in. All the Christmas opportunities and everything like that. So I'm hoping Amazon does good, but the main thing I'll be watching is AMD, of course. They've just been such a big player, like I said before, in the chip sector, and a lot of people have been watching them. So really AMD is going to be my favorite, but Amazon's a close second there, being such a large company.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to watch Amazon, but I'm also very, very curious on how Penn does. Their Thursday before open, I'm very curious because let's say they come out with like amazing, online sports betting numbers. Like that can give us a hint with DraftKings. So that could be good. Penn is a pretty good stock to own for the long term, in my opinion, too. They're at a decent level, and they just kind of fell off a cliff along with many other growth companies over like the past year. Just last year in March, they were at $142. Now they're at like 45. So
Yeah, that's at big support actually, Mike. Like if we look at the daily chart here, they had multiple bounces like in the beginning of 2020 whenever they were down there around 40. So maybe this will be a good support for them.
yeah, I definitely want to take a look at their fundamentals a little bit more and just like see like how they've been growing. But either way, it's definitely a pretty decent setup right there. Let's see. We have Ravi saying, why is Intel not making moves today? Intel's a very slow moving stock. Their ID is only 40%, so it's like they don't really move too much. But yeah, I mean, Tom, you follow Intel a lot more than I do, so I don't know if you have any input.
Yeah, I mean, they have been moving down since those earnings last week. Those earnings, they were a little bit disappointing. I mean, they weren't terrible, but they definitely weren't good. So the stock fell down. It's obviously it started falling below pretty major support here around $48. We are sitting pretty close to it now, but just be careful with it. This stock could definitely keep going down here in the short term. I know they had some pretty good news like last week, and they were running there for a couple of months, but this earnings really turned them around. So be careful with Intel, especially if you're looking at it in the shorter term. If you're looking at it for the long term, I still think it's a good opportunity to buy shares and hold, but keep in mind, that they have decent fundamentals. They've been around for a long time, so they're probably not going to go anywhere, but at the same time, they're probably not going to have the same returns a stock like AMD or something like that might have. And I also want to point out that with stocks like AMD rising, Intel generally goes down whenever AMD goes up. So also keep that in mind. They are somewhat of an inverse.
Gotcha. At least historically, like maybe over the
Yeah.
long term they'll converge and kind of move together, but I definitely know what you mean. How's MU doing?
MU, yeah, I've actually been really curious on Micron and then also Qualcomm because Qualcomm has earnings this week too, and Micron is kind of forming a good support down here, right around $76. It looks like they had a nice double bottom. I like that move. Kind of reminds me of Baba or something like that with the way it bounced off support. But personally, I mean, on the daily chart, it kind of got rejected up there around $100, Mike. And I will say I think it'll be a good dip buy, but once again, though, we'll just have to eye up those fundamentals because, MU's been all over the place this year. And while we've seen stocks like, for example, like AMD and NVIDIA break highs and stuff, MU's just been kind of staying within a range. So we'll have to kind of give this one a second look, maybe in a couple months. But I believe Nancy Pelosi got in this one, didn't she?
Oh yeah, that's why I asked because I was curious, and I've been like looking at it for a potential play. I'm kind of split though. Like obviously, MU has not seen the growth that like AMD or Nvidia has seen, but then again, like AMD for example is trading at a price to sales ratio of 9, where MU is trading at a price to sales ratio of, let's see, it's loading right now, of only 3. Pros and cons to it, but especially when you see Pelosi getting in, historically that's been a good sign.
Yeah, it really has. I mean, she's also gotten into a few other companies like Disney and Roblox too, so we'll definitely have to eye those up. But I will say though, like AMD and MU are pretty different. Like Micron, they make, they make like memory chips and stuff like that. I know that AMD makes like the graphical processing units or like the GPUs that, and AI is huge with like these GPUs. So that's why I think like AMD has a little bit more hype, but I definitely see what you're saying here, and I think it's a really good price point to buy and at least to start averaging in. Honestly, Mike, like I was really a big advocate, or I should say I was really hyping up MU whenever it was down here around the 70 support and then the 65 support. I was actually getting in and playing it to the upside a little bit. I sold out a little bit early, but I was definitely one of the ones saying to buy this one on that dip, and I liked them there. And I will say Qualcomm is another one that's been dipping that I think looks pretty good too.
There we go. Alrighty. So we have TomTom saying NXPI. There we go. All right, NXPI. NXPI is up 5.5%. It's looking pretty decent. I don't really follow it too much, but it's looking pretty decent. It's up 5.5%. Let me just check something. So their options chain isn't too liquid, at least as of right now, but maybe it's a decent longer term play. Like I said, I don't really follow it too much.
Yeah, I have not heard of this one too much either. And just looking at it compared to some other companies, it definitely looks like it's had good movement over the past few years. I just don't know how to look at it. Like I said, I haven't really heard of them too much, and they're definitely not AMD or an Nvidia or anything like that, but they could definitely be a good player. You know, they're in that semiconductor sector, and hopefully they can end up doing pretty well. I know another semiconductor that's been pretty hyped up, Mike, has been MRVL. I believe they're in the semiconductor sector, and this one's also been dipping down quite a bit. They're at $68, and man, this one had some very explosive movement the past couple of years.
Yep. All right, we have Iranical mentioning Ride, Tom, and how it's up 17%. So this is pretty crazy. Just a couple, well, I guess you could say last year, this stock was at $31. $31, and now it's below $3. So it's been a wild ride for this one. And just a quick correction, the high of like $31 was actually in 2020. But either way, like it totally fell off the board. This is the importance of fundamentals, you know, like I know there was a ton of hype with a lot of EV stocks, you know, especially in 2020 and in 2021 and even this year, for being honest. But it's important to look at the fundamentals of a company to see if the valuation, you know, is justified. And just like we were talking about with Rivian earlier, Tom, they were the what was it, the world's? I think they were the third largest auto manufacturer, I want to say in the world or in the United States, by market cap, and they had zero in sales. So it's like, it's just important to look at those fundamentals. Looking at Ride today, you know, they're up 17%. And Tom, I'll tell you, like, I'm very curious, like, is this just shorts covering their position? Because it's like, who would be buying it at this point? You know, like, it kind of makes me think shorts are covering.
Yeah, it very well might be shorts covering. I wonder how much volume came in today. Let's see. It has 3 million volume. I know it's not the most, but it might be a lot for Lordstown. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely a pretty crazy thing to see them coming in like this. I would think it was shorts covering, but then again, Mike, like last week, we did have a bit of a move up, like on Tuesday and Wednesday before Powell spoke. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, there's probably some buyers coming in, of course. Maybe somebody put out an article on Wall Street Bets or something, Mike. Who knows? But I would say I personally don't like this one. You know, it's definitely been taking a big hit the past couple of years. And I will say if their earnings come out and they end up being pretty good in March, it could do decent. But personally, it's just not for me. Like you mentioned with Rivian, it really fell off the table. And I just think that this is a good example because like we can look at stocks like Ride and then maybe look at stocks like Rivian and say, well, you know, hey, if Rivian doesn't get their production issues fixed soon, I mean, they're going to look like Ride pretty soon. So I don't know. I'd be careful with this one if you're looking to play it for the long term or the short term personally. If I were you, I would just go look at some of these other stocks moving, maybe like, you know, other EV stocks like NIO, for example, like it's moving up 11%. And I'm not saying NIO's a good one to necessarily buy here for the long term either, but at least I think it'll be better for intraday moves too.
All right. We have Samuel saying Robinhood is pumping. How's Hood doing, Tom? Up 7%.
Yeah, coming right back. It actually, it looks like it brought back all of its losses there. You know, we fell down to $9.77 there, right around $10 in after hours. We're all the way back up to $13.69, almost $14 here. Like this is a pretty crazy recovery out of Robinhood. And, you know, they didn't have the best outlook, but they did report decent revenue numbers year over year. So maybe investors are looking at this and they're looking at this $10 support and they're starting to buy this one up.
True. I mean, no doubt. I mean, the stock has had an amazing recovery ever since that report. It was all the way down to 10. Now it's at 13.50. So it's a pretty decent recovery, and it's hard to stop that type of momentum, Tom. Like, when the stock is getting pummeled in after hours, like it takes a lot for the stock to completely reverse like that.
Yeah, like I cannot believe it reversed like that. Like I don't know who was putting orders in down there around $10, but either way, I mean, there must have been a humongous wall right there. Like this stock just could not get through $10. Obviously, it hit 977 for a second there, but yeah, I mean, it was really cool to see that stock recover. I never expected this. Like whenever we were looking at this in after hours that night, Mike, I was really worried the next day that Robinhood might go down to like 950 or like even $9 or something. But I'm really happy to see that it recovered. And like Mike, I'm really curious, like kind of like what we talked about with Lordstown. Is this shorts covering, or is this, you think, maybe the actual start of some buying? Like it's hard to say. Like I would think maybe it's a combination of both, but either way, I mean, you would think some shorts would start covering soon. And honestly, like I would start averaging in here for the long term if I was really bullish on the company.
Yep. And then George said that Kathy loves buying Hood. She bought a lot last Friday right after earnings. So, yeah, she said, and then he said she's probably buying more today, which she probably is. But yeah, I would also think it's like a mix, Tom, of shorts covering and people buying the dip, because it went all the way from 85 down to 10 in like a couple months.
Yeah, and as it starts to break out, I mean, it might even start to get some good hype coming in.
Exactly. All right, so we have Bill saying thoughts on net. I like it long term. All right, so let me take a look at net. Looking at net, the chart has been pretty awesome. Like on that max weekly, it's been it's been on a really awesome uptrend, but lately it's been downtrending quite a bit. My concern with this one is the price to sales ratio. For example, their price to sales ratio is 49.4, which is absolutely insane. And that's after the giant drop. So it's like, in order to justify this type of price to sales ratio, we need to see insane growth over the next couple quarters and the next year. So it's not a play for me at this price point. I would be willing to buy this one, just not at the current price. I'll do a full fundamental analysis like video on this one soon, but I can't justify paying that type of price of sales right now, especially with rates moving the way they are. Like in 2020, their revenue was like 431 million, and compared to 2019 at 287 million, like they're definitely growing, and they're growing consistently. They're in a great industry. Their revenue is like literally consistently growing. It's just they're kind of overvalued in my opinion right now. If things change, that can be a different story. Like if their earnings report comes in and shocks the world in like a week or two, that could be different. But I like it, just not at this price.
Yeah, and whenever we're looking at the stock, like it is kind of bouncing off this $80 support. Like it might be a good play. Like if you can maybe find a good like short-term opportunity with it, like maybe if you see it bounce off that support, or you see it maybe break out above a resistance over the next couple days. Like there is a little bit of resistance coming up around $100, so maybe that'll be a good area to watch. But either way, like I would definitely eye this one up, maybe to keep going down, like you said, Mike. Like that price to sales is pretty high. Like I couldn't believe you said it was that high. And looking at the bounce here, like as we start to bounce off of $80, like we might come up and touch 100 or 120 and then start going straight back down. So it might be good for like something shorter term, but for the longer term, I would definitely like wait for a better established support level or something like that to form. And like you said, Mike, they have earnings coming up pretty soon, so that might give us better insight as well.
There we go. We have Vicky saying hit the like. So yeah, if you guys like the stream, it would mean so much to us if you could smash that like button. Thank you guys so much for joining. Tom, we have Vicky asking for some levels on Fubo, support and resistance.
Wow, it's been a while since I talked about Fubo. I will say there's a pretty big support down here around $9, at least to end the week. Last week there was. As far as this week, I would say there's a pretty good intraday support forming today. Oh, wow, right around that $10 price point. So that's going to be a good psychological level to probably watch. And we are getting really close to that resistance of last week around 1073 to 1075. So definitely be careful. We're sitting right around resistance. Maybe if we see it break out above 1075 here, we can see Fubo go on a nice run. Let me go out on a 90-day 5-minute chart just so I can see a little bit more movement here. But yeah, I would honestly just say make it break $11, Vicky. If you see it break out above $11, then I think that'll be the next resistance to watch for a nice breakout with. And then if it falls below $10, then you might want to look at it back to the downside. But I really like the way it broke out today. I think that was a nice break of resistance there.
Sounds good. And then, Tom, we need some levels on Affirm, too.
AFRM. Yeah, this one's been a pretty big stock lately. They've been making some pretty big supports down here at the bottom. So as far as like a nice swing trade, there's a pretty big support going on right around $48 to $50. I'm just going to go ahead and call that the $50 support right there. So go ahead and eye up $50 as a good bottom on like a weekly basis. If you're looking at intraday levels, today, $60 is going to be an awesome support. So definitely eye up 60. And a nice resistance to look for is going to be right around 65. So if we break out above 65, I think Affirm can keep running today. But honestly, it's already up 6%. I would maybe look for it to break 65 maybe tomorrow or obviously later on.
Sounds good. So, Tom, do you have any last-minute plays before we wrap up the stream?
Man, today was just such a good day overall with the market. We have a lot of stocks in the green. Like you said before, a lot of these hype stocks like NEO, up 11.3%. Like, that's pretty insane. It's starting to break out in a pretty major way. We had Beyond have some great news this morning. They're running up. Roblox is even up. I know this stock has been getting beaten down a ton lately as well. It's just so nice to see some of these metaverse plays back in the green. I've really been waiting to pick up some of these like Matterport, Roblox, Unity. I think some of those stocks will be great for the longer term, but like we've been saying, though, they've been a little overvalued, and they're definitely showing that in their movement lately. But I'll definitely be eyeing some of these up, and I'm really happy to see the movement. I did want to point out, though, that a lot of these stocks are up quite a bit today, guys. So if you're going to try to day trade them from here on, make sure they have some good breakouts, because it might be pretty hard for some of these stocks like Roblox to keep going up. Like, they're already up 10% today.
Yeah, that is true. All right, well, thank you guys so much for joining today's stream. Like Tom said, it's been a pretty good day so far. It's good to finally see some green on, stocks like DraftKings, Zoom, Square, Beyond, NEO. It's a pretty good day so far. So, again, thank you guys so much for joining. We really appreciate all of you. We love doing these streams. So, thank you guys so much for joining, and have an amazing rest of your day.